Welcome to the In Between Generations podcast with Dr. Lena, and
Dad.
we are so excited to share with you a little bit about ourselves and talk to you about some of the things we discuss in private and publicly. So we hope you enjoy what we have to offer. Many of you know me as Lena, a mom, an educator, a lover of lip gloss and nails. And so this is your opportunity to get to know me a little bit better. My dad will tell you a little bit about himself.
Yes, and my name is Mr. Dowdell, 72-year-old dad of, what's the name here? Oh, Lena, Dr. Lena. But I look forward to talking about various subjects. We're going to cover most everything that families deal with on a daily basis and probably some current events. So hold on to your hats and coats and get ready.
Awesome. So we'll tell you a little bit about why we got started. I think for a long time, my dad was telling me that I should do a podcast, Langston should do a podcast. You see folks on the internet doing all types of stuff, and we're pretty entertaining and interesting if you know us. And so a few months ago, my dad's health conditions kind of got worse, deteriorated, and as we were in the hospital just talking, I thought, what a fun way to kind of memorialize fun stories, events, and things that we have going on for myself and my family, but then also to be able to share. I was super surprised when I posted on the internet that we were going to do a podcast and people went crazy. I have posted plenty of things on the internet and nobody actually had anything to say about me personally, but I whispered and the crowd went wild. So here we are, giving you a little bit more of some of that. What about you, Daddy?
Well, I always pushed her, even from when she was young, because I saw her potential in things, because she was very bright. And she went to Kent, so she'll talk about that later. She went to Kent State, but then I didn't know that she would go further, so I was always in the ear. Now you know, you gotta go get a master's, you gotta go to She got the master's degree, and I said, now you gotta go take a doctorate. So when you write that book, when you write Dr. Lena Dale on there, it's gonna, set us some more prestige probably. So now she's Dr. Lena Gale. And I couldn't be more proud. As for me, we'll get to me. I was all over the place as a young man. I went to Northwestern for a year, 3 years in the Navy, worked various types of jobs, mostly in the social services area. But we'll get to that.
So I think the best way for us to get started is maybe a little bit of question and answer, and then we'll get into some more conversational things. And so we talked a little bit about the why that we started the podcast, but I guess I'll ask my dad more directly, why was it important for you to start a podcast or to share our stories with others?
Because like I said, I look at you, my 12-year-old grandson, and see how bright and accomplished you both are. And I just think back over my childhood and how I came up, and even generation before me, because I grew up around older cousins, lots of older cousins, and uncles and great uncles and whatnot. And I've told her, well, you hear me say sister, that's her nickname. So now you guys know. I've been calling her sister since she's about 3 months old. But I always talk to her about things that happened growing up, and some of the stuff she, got a kick out of. I said, so, people probably would be interested, because from the generation I grew up in and the generation before that, there's a vast, vast difference between how things are now. And I would often I say to my grandson sometimes now, boy, you lucky you didn't grow up when I grew up, you wouldn't have survived. Because it was different, the parents were different, grandparents were different. So we want to research some of that stuff, talk about some of those things, and talk about how they've affected who we've become now.
And so what do you hope people feel when they listen? I know people heard a little bit about that, but tell us a little bit more. When folks listen, what are you hoping that they get from hearing about us?
Well, hopefully they'll draw on how lucky they are to live in the time that they're living in. And hopefully they'll benefit from some things that are said about how it was when I was coming up. Because when you talk to the generations now, they just shake their heads and say, that's crazy. But there are some beneficial things here. There's some things that could benefit them in today's world. So that's what I'm hoping. That after some reflection, they'll see that although I think it was a harsher time when I grew up, but there's things they can take from it to utilize to make their lives better today, and so that they're grateful that the lives that they do have today, because it's much more difficult because of some of the things that goes on today. They have AI and this and that. They have so many things to worry about, but it could be, I think, so much simpler if certain principles were applied, and we'll talk about some of that back from the 50s and 60s, which is when I grew up, as opposed to today.
Very good. And so I guess we'll kind of move into something. We'll talk a little bit about our relationship. Like my dad said, some of you know us from talking to us, but this is an opportunity to get to know us a little bit more intimately. So what kind of relationship would you say that we've always had?
Well, I defy any father-daughter relationship to show that it's been any better. We were two peas in a pod when she was growing up. From birth till now, she's been a light in my life. And when she was a young girl, she was always hanging out with me. She went everywhere with me, unless, of course, I was going somewhere that I thought was inappropriate for her. But I mean, you name it. Well, we were doing it together. And maybe as we go on, we can show you some pictures of her the various stages of growing up. From 3 months old, when we're sitting together on the couch, right up to today. But it's just been a pure joy for me to watch her blossom and grow. And she'll tell you, like I just said myself, that I stay in her ear about something because I see her potential. And she's still, well, I won't say how old she is. I'll let her do that. But at her age now, I know how ladies are about their age. But even till now, I stay in her ear about things because I see things, and I can see she in my mind, she's achieved a level of greatness, but she can be much greater. So until the Lord calls me home, I'll be in her ear saying, you should look at this, check that out, try this. So, but just like that, couldn't have been better.
I agree. I'm 40, so there's no surprise. I don't mind telling folks I'm 40, I think.
Oh, she's gotten old.
Well, if I'm old, obviously he's older. But I would agree. I think we have had a really good relationship, or what I would categorize as good, from the time I was young up until now. I think about it as in a different lens, I think, because I'm a parent now. And so as a child, this is no secret, but it's new to you. I didn't get a lot of whoopings growing up. That wasn't really how they did things around here. But
she didn't get as many as she needed, but never mind.
Yeah, he claims he owes me some, but he's not in a condition to do that now. So anyway, but I would say when I was younger, there was that healthy fear, or for lack of better words, right? That my parents or my father gave me directives, and so that I should follow those things. However, it wasn't like a lot of, I think, parents that are his age necessarily parent. There was a lot of conversation, which is why there weren't a lot of whoopings. I guess you could say Lisford is an OG gentle parent. In the sense that I think a lot of us have adapted gentle parenting, that, there were conversations, but if the conversation didn't yield the result, then there were consequences. And I think that is what gentle parenting really is at the core of things. And we can talk more about that, or debate in the comments, or whatever it is that you all would like to do. But I do think that is what folks mean when they say gentle parenting. And so that is who my dad was growing up. We were able to have conversations. I was able to ask certain questions and get a response. But then there still was that, he is a boomer. So there was still some of that tension of, you don't ask your parents certain questions. I do think as our relationship has evolved and my dad sees how I parent my son, that he understands, like, oh yeah, that would have been a good conversation to have, or I understand why you have said that, or why you have those conversations. But I think overall, I think we can call us the OG gentle parent in that sense. And then I think by creating that safe space where I could ask questions, or we did have just conversations about things in life in general, as an adult, it continued to be a safe space where I could go to him and ask questions, or um, just talk to him in general about life and ask for advice. And he'll tell you that he gives me advice. I don't always like what he has to say. I don't think I've ever always liked everything he has to say. But even when we disagree, we can still have the closeness that we have, because I know who he is and he knows who I am, and he has allowed me to be myself fully. He's never been the parent who was like, you didn't do what I asked, or you didn't do it how I wanted, and so now I'm going to treat you differently, or I'm going to see you differently. So that, I would say, is a testament of the relationship. And so a lot of folks say, like, oh, I'm not one of your little friends. I don't necessarily consider my dad my friend, but I know that my dad sees me as a full adult 40-year-old, and he respects me as that. And so he's always going to be my father, and I'm always going to have that respect for him. But then there is now a different relationship that we have, as father and daughter, and not father and child, right? So I think there's a distinct difference between those things, and he was able to do that through a bunch of different ways. And again, when we get into our next episode, when we talk about what type of child I was, he'll tell you some of those things. But again, like he said, we were together all the time. I was laughing and joking. I go to therapy, so just in case you were wondering. But I was telling my therapist, my dad used to be in the lodge when I was growing up. I was at the Masonic temple, or at the church, or the bar, or wherever they were giving out their fish dinners, playing pool, hanging out. My dad got haircuts. I was over there with him waiting. My dad used to be in a band. We're definitely going to talk about that, because we found some of the old music, so we will share that. There were some jams, okay, that they had. And so he would be at the band practice, and I'd be sitting on the steps of Mr. Duck's basement listening to him practice and play and singing along to the songs. Yes, I said Mr. Duck. For all of you who are not familiar, here in the Black culture, we put a handle on everybody's name, even if it's a nickname.
Everybody.
So that was not his given name, but that was his nickname, and it still was Mr. or it's Miss. And so just a fun fact for those of you who are listening or viewing. But yeah, my dad and I always hung out. I remember reading when we were little, when my grandmother lived on Limar, just all the things. And so hopefully you all can hear some of those stories and be encouraged as a parent, as a father, as a daughter, as a child, and say, oh, these are examples of people who are older than me, who also have made those adjustments. Because I recognize that my dad, being the type of parent that he is, and having the relationship that we had, he had to evolve, he had to change. I think his social work background helped with that, and his working with people. And he realized that while his upbringing was the best that his family and his elders could provide, that it may not be what the child in front of you or the people in front of you need. And so again, we'll talk about some of those things as we go. As you can tell, this is really kind of just introductory. So we want to give you guys a little bit. It'll give you an opportunity to interact with us and say some things you might want to hear more on, because, this is fun, it's casual. But yeah, anything else you want to say about our relationship before we kind of move into some other things?
That covers it pretty well. I just always wanted her to be exposed to as many things as possible. See, a lot of things from my generation, was just either hidden or, for lack of knowledge, just disallowed. Like if I went and asked somebody about banking, about money, well, how does this work? They'd run you off. Why? Probably two reasons. People that raised me had very little money, and they didn't know anything about money. I learned to write a check from a book. So the thing is, I just wanted her to be exposed to as much as possible because I knew how bright she was, to not be afraid to venture forth and find out things and ask questions, because sometimes you'll get dismissed and not in a nice way, but other times people will bring you in and you'll learn something that you never would have learned before. So I just wanted her to be, just like now, she's 40 years old and I still want her to be exposed. I'm still in her ear, like I said, take a look at this, take a look at that. So that's all, and that's just all comes from love. I wanted the best for her. I wanted her to be a million times better than my upbringing.
With that being said, what's one memory of our relationship that you think captures who we are as a dad and daughter duo?
That's a good question. I mean, we were together so much and did so many things together. Wow. It captures. Well, some of the stuff you mentioned I have fond memories of as well. Like she mentioned, I was an officer in my lodge, and we sold fish sandwiches at a fundraiser, and there was a place the guys hung out. And if she asked, could she go with me? And like I said, unless it was inappropriate, I said, yeah, come on. Because I know the guys, how they were treated. And she did pretty well, too, because you know how old heads are. Hey, baby, and they just slip you $1. So she enjoyed that. She got a little money. She got a little pocket change from it, so. But there's just so many moments. And they'll come up in the course of us talking about other aspects of the family. So just stay tuned, because some funny stories, some not so funny stories. And then when I tell you about some of my relatives, you're going to say, that's unbelievable. You're going to think I made it up, especially like about my mother, but that's coming. And her and my mother were like, talk about tight. My mother like worship. You know, I was my mother's baby until she was born. Then I got kicked to the curb and everything was for her.
Yeah.
She spoiled her. We all spoiled her rotten. We'll get into that too. I spoiled her mother, her grandmother. You know, she had aunts and uncles. She's spoiled. Because when she says, my grandson, oh, he's spoiled. I said, he's no more spoiled than you was. You got virtually everything you want, and now he's getting what he wants. But
he is worse.
No, he's not. No, he's not. He's just,
is worse.
He's just more vocal than she was. He'll talk about stuff, or he'll ask for stuff, or he'll expound on something until he convinces you that he needs it. She wouldn't do that so much, and she didn't have to. Like I said, if it was something my mother could get for her, she got it. That was her baby. That was her baby.
Relentless, but Langston gets it from both sides because his father is relentless also. Yeah. But again, you'll see Langston a little bit later. He's on his holiday tour right now, and also thanks to many of your support, he is going to be going to his camp this summer, and so he will come back and tell us all about that. But yeah, so he's not here right now. So thinking about family and memories, what's one thing do you think that people misunderstand, maybe about families, or even, I wouldn't say our family, because I feel like a lot of folks don't know very much about us, but you could choose either one, our family or just families in general.
Well, I think we have these notions of, like Sister was talking about how things should be. Like dad, daughter, and that's her role as daughter, and she can escape over doing this, and this, but don't go beyond that point. See, we are all individuals. We're all human beings. And despite what we teach our children, they're going to have some things in them that we don't have in us. And she's as much like me as anybody was. She'll tell you sometimes we just look at each other and we know it. I think we know what each other's thinking. And we might bust out laughing and think, what are these fools laughing about? Nobody said anything. but that's the kind of rapport that we have. But still, I recognize her for who she is. And I think that gets lost in families. And that's where roadblocks and sometimes difficulties occur, especially with parents, and especially from my generation, because we expect that you should, in this situation, you need to do this, and you need to do that, you need to do, and we try to dictate. But she's an individual. She's her own woman. She's so much like me, and then, in many ways, so much not like me. And I learned to accept that. And that's what one of the things we have to learn is that we're all different, no matter how much the same we are, how much the same blood runs through our veins.
Yeah, I think that's key. The idea that the expectation, another thing that I talk to my therapist about, we talk about in like the Black community and just amongst us, especially with the boomers, and I guess I'm like millennial or Gen Z. I don't know what I'm supposed to be. I think I'm an elder millennial at this point, but at any rate, but this idea of there are these expectations, right? Like, I think the perfect example of this is my father being sick now. Well, when his mother was sick, or if his elders were sick, the expectation is like the kids must drop everything and you devote your life to taking care of that person until, they're no longer here or someone else picks up that responsibility. And, or even just like financially, right? Like, you as a child, once you start doing well, then you should take on the responsibility of your siblings or your families. And so I agree. And I do think that for me personally, as an only child, that has brought some, I think, tension, not just to my immediate family, I think, but to our family as a whole, that extends to my aunts and uncles and everyone, because I think people see me visit my dad, they see me care for my father, they see me pick him up and things, but then they also see me say, well, I'm not going today, or I'm not doing that, or I have other plans. And I think it's very hard for them to understand that I wouldn't drop everything and attend to my father, and that two things can't be true, that I can't love him so much and also still hold on to my life as a 40-year-old who also is raising a child and has a career, etc. And so I think I agree that is definitely a tension that shows up in families, because there is this idea of silent expectations, right? Like things you should just do because it's your father, it's your mother, it's your aunt, it's your elder, it's your older sister. And I am very much, very, very much my own person. I think it also showed in the fact that once I graduated from college, I moved to New York. And that is something that no one in my family, no one in my family had ever done. Meanwhile, this is also the same father was like, pursue your dreams, do the things that you love. So as we said, two things can be true. He can be immensely sad that his only child is left, but also proud to know that I am able to do those things. So absolutely. I think that is definitely a misconception within our family, but then in a lot of families, people of color, Black people in particular, that's who I have the most research in because I am Black. So I would say for sure that definitely resonates with me. And so again, we'll continue to touch on a lot of these topics, but we do also want to tell you a little bit of fun facts about us, or talk about fun things. And I think something that is connected to that when I think about our relationship, if you know my dad and you know me and you see us, we do look serious often. But something that I think a lot of people don't know is that we're actually hilarious. That's number one. It's up for debate with some people, but not to me. It's not up for debate. Some people might say, oh, Lena, you're not that funny. Hilarious. Ask about me. But my dad is equally as funny. And to the point that he made earlier, a lot of the times we look at each other and we laugh, or things happen and we have quotes. My uncle, who will join us in some future episodes, will tell you we drive him absolutely crazy because sometimes we don't even say any words, we just do the thing where we go back and forth with movies and funny things and funny sayings that we like. And they don't make sense to a lot of other people, but they make perfect sense.
That's right. That's right. So I think it's important, like Lena said, in family relationships to realize each one of us is different. And for us as adults, and especially my generation, we had expectations that were very selfish. I have to say it like it is. You know, it's what I wanted as an adult right now. Or like she said, she'll see people in our family expect, well, Lena's making 6 figures. She can lend me such and such and such. Well, yeah, she is making 6 figures. But that's something she earned, and it shouldn't be something that's assumed. But we get a lot of that. And that in itself, too, is selfish. But like she said, we'll get more into that and about the pros and cons of that viewpoint.
Yeah. And I also think that people have just expectations in general. I think about in our family dynamic, for those of you who know us personally, you know that my mom has lots of siblings, and some siblings help raise other siblings' children, vice versa. There's this age-old conversation of siblings or children raised by family or who have been raised by biological parents. And so sometimes I think there's also in that same vein expectation that because I was raised by my mother and my father, they in turn finance my life, or or I'm always asking them for things, or I have my hand in their pocket. But again, to know me is to know, because Lispert always told me, you gotta have your own.
No, my sister. You got to have your own.
Okay, all right. So that is something that I was taught very, very early on, to always have your own. And so even if my parents have something, that does not mean that it is inherently mine. So I think that again goes into some of those misunderstandings and things that we definitely want to cover. As we end this episode, I think we could do a little bit of this or that. So I'll ask my dad some questions, some things he prefers, and I'll share some things I prefer. So, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Coffee, yes. I love coffee. Nespresso is my favorite. So
She's one of those fancy Negroes. With the cappuccino with the half cat. All of that stuff.
I used to
Sugar and cream.
I used to be more fancy with coffee. And he'll tell you, I've been drinking coffee since I was really little.
Since
you remember?
12.
If you know, then you know McDonald's used to have cappuccinos. If you don't know, then that means you're too young and you missed out on the time. But McDonald's used to have cappuccinos, and that's where I started. So shout out to McDonald's for the cappuccinos.
And she had 2 older cousins she would spend time with, they're 3-4 years older, and they drank coffee, so she started drinking coffee. And I tried to encourage her not to drink coffee. You know, I don't want to think of some mortal sin to drink coffee, but I just thought she was too young for it yet. But she's been drinking it since she was 12, and she turned out all right, I guess.
What's funny is that as of lately, my son has been requesting coffee in the morning. So maybe 12 years old is the time where children like coffee, but I've only offered him decaf. I haven't given him full caffeinated coffee because he doesn't need all of that.
That's right.
But now I'm a little bit more of a coffee purist. I like a little oat milk or something in my coffee. Keep it simple. Action movies or horror movies?
Action. She knows the answer to that. Growing up, from about age 14 through when I went, well, even at Northwestern, I studied martial arts. Okinawan karate from 14 to early 20s, and then when I got to Northwestern, they had one of the foremost masters of Taekwondo was teaching because he was living in Chicago. So I studied with him while that year I was at Northwestern, and I've always loved the action stuff. And then I had a couple friends that boxed, you know, and so I used to play around with them until one hit me so hard in the liver. You guys, if you know anything about boxing, And you see somebody get a body shot and they go down and can't get up. It's a liver shot. You get hit in the liver the wrong way, fight's over. And so we were just sparring. After that, there was no more sparring for me. I would watch. But I told him, that's it, bud. I'm not messing with you anymore. But always it's been action, martial arts kind of thing. So, and thrillers, I like a good thriller. And I also love mysteries. Because I'm always challenged saying that, no, it was him, And I'm happy, when I figured out who it was, and then sometimes I was thinking, I wasn't even close. But it's fun to watch a movie and try to figure out who done it.
Well, for me, it's horror movies. Horror movies all day, every day. Freddie is my favorite. He already knows. But again, he talked about his mom. It's her fault.
It is.
Because I spent a lot of time with my grandma, hanging out. I was watching action movies because she loves Steven Seagal. A lot of y'all love Steven Seagal in that little ponytail.
Yeah,
but she loved him. What is it? Under Siege?
Under Siege, yeah.
I think he had about a couple of them. But yeah, she loved the Steven Seagal movie, so I've probably seen all of those. She loved Jaws, which is kind of like a thriller, I think, more than a horror movie.
Right.
So I've seen all of the Jawses, but horror movies. Loved horror movies. Tales from the Crypt, again, if you know, you know. So those are definitely some things that I loved. And we'll get into some of those things a little bit further down the road. But just, again, giving you an opportunity to hear some about us. A couple more questions. The pool or the beach?
The beach. I'm not a strong swimmer or any of that, but being on the beach, there's something breathtaking about being in nature. And I always found it fascinating. I didn't go on cruise with the USS Enterprise, but I was attached to it. I worked on an anti-submarine plane. And so we were getting ready for the years coming in case a combat situation came up. And so we would go out and do maneuvers even with other countries. And being on the water, if you were ever out in the ocean, nothing but water as far as the eye can see. It's fascinating. And then at night, if the moon comes up on the horizon on the water, beautiful, gorgeous. So.
And then our final question. Oh, well, I guess not the final question. I agree. I love the beach. I think it's probably because it's somewhere that we always went as a kid as well. So we spent a lot of time at the beach, I don't know, from probably the time or before I was born until middle school. Every year we were at the beach.
Yeah.
So don't love the sand because it just, if somebody could create sand or something that gets the sand off you real fast. But I love the ocean. I like being at the beach. I love a tan. Like you said, the sound of the ocean, looking off a balcony into the ocean. The beach is definitely the place to be, for sure. And then our final question is, night owl or early bird?
You want to answer that? That's one of the reasons my body's probably tore up now. Night owl. I spent many days right into the night, into the next morning. I always like to read. I love music. And so I was always doing something that I didn't want to stop doing. So I just stayed up. Yeah. And then when I was running the streets, sometimes we'd be out to the wee hours. My mother used to get after me. But when I turned about 17, she started leaving me alone. And she knew I could take care of myself. But, yeah. Night owl. Definitely.
Yeah, me neither. At this point, I think when I was younger and in college, I would stay up a lot. I remember burning the midnight oil in college, staying up late and going to parties. I remember the process of being in a sorority and all of those things. But I think after that, around 2006, it was real hard then for me to stay up late. I think even though I don't want to, I think as a parent, I started getting up earlier. And so now, even if the alarm clock doesn't go off, my body usually starts to rise around 6:30. So I guess technically I would be an early bird, but I prefer rest, whatever that time is. the middle of the day, the rest time. That's what I prefer.
Yeah, I've learned to appreciate rest more myself, but when you get my age, your body will make you appreciate it because you just don't have the stamina to go and go and go. But it's all good.
Well, I think that about concludes our first episode. I think that gives the folks a little bit of something to look forward to. They've learned some things maybe they didn't know about us. Maybe generate some questions that you all would like for us to discuss, or topics that you would like to ask me as a mom, as an educator, as someone who may be a little closer to your age, or to my dad who's a little bit older, seasoned educator, but also social worker with lots of life experience. Something he didn't say about himself that I think is pretty cool, and I tell people, is that he has spent a lot of time counseling young fathers and young men just about life, and I think in a practical and real way. Again, as we continue to talk and you get to know us, you know, my dad is very open and will share things. I think that has also happened. That has also helped support our relationship. I think when you as a child or as a daughter can see the evolution of your parent and they're willing to own their decisions, their mistakes, their, you know, choices, that is also helpful. I don't think my dad has ever tried to pretend like he was a perfect person. I don't think anyone's a perfect parent, but when people talk about folks as individuals, I think I probably have the best dad that anybody could have. And maybe somebody disagrees, and that's okay, but I get to decide because it's my dad. So I say what I said. But I think that also helped strengthen the relationship, is that my dad was a human as well as my dad. And I think sometimes as parents, you know, we try to act like we have all the answers or we know everything. And he's kind of never been like that. He is a know-it-all, but
I know most of it.
But as a dad, he never entered into our conversations or made me feel like, you know, the things that I was asking or things that he knew were just, you know, the way that it was. So again, we're gonna wrap up. Well,
and we'll get into this, some of the things she just mentioned in more depth as we go on. But as parents, your kid's gonna ask. This child here asks questions constantly. And sometimes I knew the answer, sometimes I didn't. Even about school, work, or anything else. And most of the time I say, I don't know. Let's go look it up. And we go look it up together and find out about it together. But don't ever try to act like you know everything with your children. If you don't know, tell them you don't know. If they come to you with some delicate subject, talk to them about it. But bring it to that level. If you're talking to an 8-year-old and they ask about their body, you say, boy, you know, my generation say, boy, get up, you know, get back at it, get out of here, or go take that bath like I told you. And they wouldn't discuss it with you. But, you know, we talk about anything, just like I do with my grandson. I just talk about it in a way that he understands. And then he'll say, oh, okay, Papa. And he's gone. And most of the time I don't hear anything else about it. He just wanted to know. I'd rather, you know, tell her something when she was young, or tell my grandson something that I know is factual, than have one of their little friends make up something. Those stork $5 brings a baby. And no, man, that's not how, not how children are born. Yeah. But that kind of thing, just be honest with your children, because they're watching you. Your kids are watching you. I don't want to get off, we'll get more into this, but here's a great principle for your parents. Your kids will, you know, you can tell your kids anything. You can yell at them, you can drive stuff home every day, but they're not going to do they'll do what you say do while they're little, because probably they're intimidated. When they get older, they're going to do what? What they see you do, and say much of what they hear you say. So be straight with your kids. Be honest. You don't know, you don't know. Let's find out.
And I think that's a great place to end it. Thanks, Dad, for your thoughts. Hopefully you all are liking and subscribing and interacting with our video, and we look forward to our next episode, episode 2, where you'll get to learn about what type of kid I was.
Terrible. No.
Thanks for tuning in to In Between Generations.